Hello, I'm Kim Casey,
And I'm Adrienne Johnson.
and we are Reclaiming
Reclaiming
Sisterhood.
Sisterhood.
Today's podcast is called When Being Enough is Revolutionary, Unpacking Black Excellence. We're in for a really big treat today. Today, our guest speaker is Giselle Clemens. She is a dynamic leader whose career has been dedicated to bringing deliberately marginalized voices from the margins to the center. With years of experience navigating institutions that weren't designed for her in mind, Giselle brings a critical lens to conversations about performance, perfection, and cultural identity. Giselle's lived experience as a high achieving Black woman in academia and advocacy makes her uniquely equipped to unpack the nuances of Black excellence and its double edged sword. I'm going to give a little context before we just jump right in and give Giselle a whole bunch of questions and fodder for this discussion today. In this episode, we're going to turn the spotlight on often invisible expertise of Black women whose leadership is essential, yet unrecognized. We're going to dig into what it means when you do the work and often go above and beyond and still find the formal title or power elusive. Our featured guest embodies this dynamic. She's delivering results, she's solving crises, she's bridging gaps, and she's showing up without always being seen. This conversation matters because Black women continue to carry pivotal roles across sectors in nonprofits, corporations, government, and community spaces that are critical, complex, and high stakes. But carrying the weight doesn't always mean having the voice, the recognition, or the seat. As we center this truth, we will open the space to ask, how do we reclaim this seat? We already started this episode before we started the episode today because we started talking, and automatically when Giselle and I and Adrienne are together, we automatically go into talking about the issues of the day, specifically related to Black women and how we're going to solve them together. Yeah. So thank you, Giselle, for being here. The first part of this we want to talk about is who taught us what Black excellence is supposed to mean, or how do we come to know it, embody it, or reject it?
I would say that I didn't necessarily attribute what I knew as success in Black communities to Black excellence until I started seeing sort of the hashtag Black excellence. For me, growing up, it was just Black pride. I have an West Indian mother and a Harlem Bronx dad. And so academics was always of the utmost importance, right? Yeah. You don't bring any B's home, all A's. So being excellent was being academically gifted. Being excellent was being able to do well in my extracurriculars if I'm playing the piano or I'm dancing. It was never, to me, ascribed or counter to whiteness.
Yeah.
Because I didn't grow up in a white community. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. So it was just excellent in who you are as a Black child in Newark, New Jersey. Be excellent.
Yeah.
I can pick that up. And coming from a diverse family and a diverse background, there wasn't much on like Black excellence. It was the academic component is how you succeed. But I think, one of the things we were talking about before we came into the podcast was around my idea of what Black excellence was came from Ebony, Jet magazine, Essence. I remember my mom getting Jets every week. I'm reading the Jets. I'm even reading them like stories to my baby sisters, right? And that provided the imagery for me to say what I believe Black excellence was, which is counterintuitive and couched in white supremacy because as Black people, our hair had to be straight. We had to wear the suit. Yes. We had to show up super professional. So why don't you talk a little bit maybe about that?
So I would say I started to really understand that dynamic within my family. I had a dark-skinned cousin who, was just like, you're light-skinned, you're this, that's why you get these advantages and things of that nature. And then in high school, I read Our Kind of People. And then I really think I understood and then I didn't call it Black excellence. I saw it as Black exceptionalism, or this idea of how, what I read it as, how Black people separated themselves within society and with them amongst each other. And so I immediately rejected that, right?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm light skinned, I'm going in the sun, I'm going to get dark. Oh, my hair is straight, oh, I'm going natural, right? So this was not the cool thing to do. I know I look young and fresh faced, but this was 2002 when being natural and all of those things was not like in style.
Yeah.
But I was very much okay with it because I did not want to chase Black exceptionalism. I did not want that model of Blackness to be my representation of Blackness.
Yeah, so I agree with that, and it kind of aligns with. So I went natural in '01, right? And very, similar to you, I had very long hair. My hair's always been thick, and I remember, my granddad saying, "Why would you? Who want to go around looking like that?" And I'm like what, granddaddy? This is my hair, but I saw it as this is how it grows out of my head, and I'm proud of it, right?
And that should have been Black excellence.
Yep. But yeah, exactly. That should have been Black excellence, and I looked at it as pride, but not, yeah. Oh, sorry. So how would you describe how this takes the term Black excellence versus Black pride? How would you describe that taking a toll on Black women in the roles that we do every day?
The way that Black excellence is portrayed is this idea of I have achieved this feat, I have achieved this title, but it doesn't talk about what it took to do so. And a lot of times people are making themselves sick. They are disconnecting themselves from community. There are a lot of things that they've had to sacrifice in order to achieve this idea of Black excellence. And so that's different than Black pride because it's being proud of how you got there, who you are, because Blackness is multidimensional and it looks different because people have different routes that they take.
Yeah.
And that's what we saw in history books, right? Like I just came back from the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, Alabama. And oh my goodness, I have so much Black pride right now. And I also feel like that was an example of Black excellence because of the many different ways that people gathered around to become who they were and to allow others to be who they were.
Yeah.
That's what Black excellence, Black pride feels like to me.
So if I hear you right, it's almost like I'm here, but I'm also going to bring you with me so that we can all be good together.
And I'm going to show you, and I'm going to show you and I'm going to tell you, because all of what I've experienced is Black excellence, not just the ascent. Or not just the destination, right? Like the journey of it all was excellent.
The journey of it was excellent.
Because I showed up as myself in every one of those rungs on the ladder.
Yeah.
And I need you to know what that looked like.
Oh, that's good. Because you showed up as yourself. And I think that is missed when we're talking, especially to younger people, younger Black women, about being excellent. There has to be, like, you can't show up as Boom Quisha at the office party. You got to be Boom. They gonna shorten you.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And Lucretia is excellent too. She has excellence about her.
Yeah.
And so how dare we dismiss and disparage her journey and who she is because we don't deem it, quote unquote, as excellent.
Yeah.
This excellence needs to be expanded.
Yeah.
And it needs to include everyone.
So
Well, I was just going to say, I think the problem, though, with that, what gets in the way of that is our society structure of capitalism. At the end of the day, I can be Black excellent. You can be Black excellent. I can be proud to be Black, but I still got to put food on my table, pay my bills, and sometimes that's at the expense of community. So how are we going to deal with that when we talk about Black excellence among women, right? Because sometimes us striving to be excellent and us striving to do good, sometimes the system that's set up, we're striving inside of the wrong structure.
This is true. And I'd like to take this moment to bring in a concept that's in the disability community, which I am a proud member of, with my invisible and visible disabilities. T.L. Lewis provides the following working definition of ableism: a system that places value on people's bodies and minds based on societally constructed ideas of normalcy, intelligence, and excellence. These constructed ideas of normalcy, intelligence, and excellence are deeply rooted in anti-Blackness, which is why Black excellence looks different than Black pride, or in the way we talk about it.
Yeah.
Eugenics and capitalism. This form of systemic oppression leads to people in society determining who is valuable and worthy based on people's appearance and or their ability to satisfactorily produce, excel, and behave. You do not have to be disabled to experience ableism.
That's true. That's fact.
And I would say because of these societally constructed definitions of excellence that we have ascribed to us, that's what's happening. And so it's really up to us to redefine and reclaim excellence. And I know when we put Black excellence on it, it was supposed to be something different.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, it started to look like the same stuff that we should have been trying to escape.
They got co-opted.
Yeah. So how would you say how would you say we reclaim it and take it back? How do we redefine what excellence looks like? What if you're talking to young Black women, young Black men, me?
Oh, okay. Well, I'll tell you how I work in Black excellence, and how I show up. And I believe it's Black excellence is the idea that when I show up at work, I give the job exactly the energy and the time that I get paid for. And then I shut down at 5:00 because I need to be able to shore up myself to be able to continue to do the work the next day. And because I also do things in community. So I cannot have the job, which already takes up 8 hours of my day, to siphon off even more so that I cannot show up well in community for my friends, for my people, and most importantly, for myself.
Yeah.
That is Black excellence to me because I am allowing myself to each day excel in the ways that I'm supposed to because I am not overwhelming myself and I am not subscribing to this hustle culture that only ends up leading us dry.
So I just want to make sure we say it for the people in the back. If I work my 8-hour day,
Right. Like you're supposed to work it.
I don't take my work home to work another 8 hours,
What a novel idea, right?
and I can still be excellent.
And you can still be excellent. And I know that that's not normal, right? And I need people to understand that this is how I was before I became physically disabled. I have a spinal cord injury. So I've noticed how people show up to me now. I always say that I had the privilege of acquiring a disability later in life so that my ascent to leadership looks a lot different than other Black women who are disabled, who are born with their disability. So I automatically already say that. However, before my physical disability, I was very aware of my mental health, which is also a disability, FYI. Nobody likes to talk about it, but depression, ADHD, anxiety are all disabilities. Disability is not a bad word, right?
Yeah.
Just like Black excellence is, we're not damning it to hell either, right? We're just saying that it needs to be reframed and brought back to the pride that it was built on. You just, sorry, I went on a tangent.
no,
so
go.
I'm like, bring me back, y'all. I just think that before that, I was always aware of my mental health. And so the way that I showed up was very important. So I did not fall into depression and things of that nature. And I wasn't really aware of my mental health until I lost my mother in the way that I did. So in high school, the things that I was noticing about myself that made me different than everyone was ADHD, and I didn't know it.
Yeah.
Right. So we have all of these things that we're walking around with as Black women, whether we want to talk about it or not. And I think this idea of hustle culture is we're trying to out hustle ourselves and just being okay with, I've ascended to this ladder and this position, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's enough.
Yep.
Or this right here is okay for me too. And I don't need my professional or personal life to look like Kim's or to look like Adrian's. What I have for me is enough. And that is excellent.
Because Black excellence doesn't look the same.
It shouldn't. And that's the problem.
And that's the problem.
Because it does look the same to so many people that so many people don't see themselves in it.
Yeah.
And so we have to expand it. My friends who are doing great work in the disability community may never get this platform, but they are walking embodiments of Black excellence.
Absolutely.
Nice. Yeah. That's really good.
So you talked a lot about like how you came to be in terms of your understanding and how you're looking at yourself now and giving yourself the grace to like take a pause or to elevate. What is it that we can say to other women that helps them get to that point, right? So before we can start saying, I need to reflect and I need to advance myself as my own image of Black excellence, what do we got to do with ourselves to get to that point, to be open to that?
I think two questions that are really important to ask is, as you're thinking about what your trajectory is, what will it cost? As you're thinking about where you are right now, what has it cost? And sit with that and take stock of those answers. And I feel like when you sit with those answers,
yeah.
something has to shift.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Yeah. Oh, that's
deep.
real good.
That's almost like a whole mic drop right there, because I just think about, one, we don't give ourselves enough time to do that, right? Because we on go, 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 or running from one thing to the next, keeping ourselves busy. And I think about, let's add a little bit into this. We talked a little bit about mental health and it impeding how we see Black excellence. But I even want to think about like our childhood traumas and how those things may come up and impede our view of what excellence is, or how we participate in excellence ourselves, right? So some of us grew up in domestic violent households, right, where there was a strong paternalistic viewpoint happening. Some of us grew up in multi-race households where the brown paper bag test was a serious thing, right? And so when we talk about that, you know, we kind of gloss over mental health and we talk about, you know, it's easy for us to talk about the, you know, bipolar, the anxiety, some of the more common terms that people are now using. But think about all the stuff that was weighing on me before I became an adult and how that has an impact on how I see who a leader is or how I see myself as a leader.
And if I could just add one thing to that, you know, in our households, we're taught you got to be 3 times better, right? So before you even get out of your household, that also plays into into how you, into your mental health and how you show up.
I will say that so my mother, like I said, my parents were very big on education. I believe when they sent me to boarding school, me being the child that I was, it was very hard for them to tell me anything about what I was supposed to be doing academically or not, because they were not in the environment that I was in. They had never experienced that environment, and so they couldn't tell me, you should be getting all A's. You should be going. Do you see that? You don't see this, right? You have no idea what I'm dealing with, and so for me, that was a very much okay. So my identity is now not necessarily wrapped up in what my parents think of me, because they don't have the same understanding of what I'm dealing with, and I wish I could say it was now in contrast to my peers, but I told you what my peers were doing. So I was like, I don't want to do that either. And so I had to create my own identity. And so I started reading history books. So I would go to the Schomburg on like my high school breaks. And the Schomburg is a public library in Harlem where my family is from. But I would go to their book store, their gift shop, and write down all the books. And like go and be like, this is what I want for Christmas. So, and when I was by the time I was a senior, I was doing like, not, what are the classes called that you don't do regularly? They're like an aside.
Audit.
No. No, it was my own class that I created.
Oh.
So yeah, I created a class with an English teacher, Ruth Geyer, love her. With an English teacher looking at the women in the civil rights movement. So I was finding my identity in Black history and women and what it was that they were working to achieve. Because I knew, like, yes, we knew about the civil rights movement, but we knew through it. I knew it through a male lens.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to hear about the women who were getting the Black Panther parties, spaces together, right? There was no small thing that was being done to make these things happen. The Diane Nash and I'm just running like Elaine Brown, right? A Taste of Power was my book, right? Like I learned about these women and I was like, okay. And these weren't people who were academically doing anything, right? Yeah. These were women who were in community and wanting to be a part of a movement that was excelling and bring us all along.
Yeah.
So that's how my identity was created, because I wasn't seeing it. And frankly, my disposition was like, you can't tell me anything about me because I'm going to learn and tell you who I am.
That's good. That's real good. Yeah.
It makes me think about something my grandfather would always say to us. And he would say, just be the best you and be the best you can be. And he was like, so if you want to be a doctor, be the best doctor. Right. He said, but if you don't want to be the best doctor and you want to be a receptionist, be the best receptionist. And I think that was probably one of the only times I got a message of you could just be anybody you want to be, just be the best, right? Versus you got to be a doctor or a lawyer, right? Or an Indian chief is what they used to say, right? And so when we're telling all the children they got to be a doctor, lawyer, or an Indian chief, there's no room for failure. There's no room to not be excellent, right? So there's a sadness in the middle of excellence and then the acting of excellence, right? Because we're all trying to grab at something that is unfamiliar, that maybe not even attainable, but we're still trying to grab at it because the Ebony and the Jet magazine had told me that I could do that too, right? Through these pictures and through these images. But then we don't take into consideration how society has these structures that have already said you only gonna be this much, right? So now we've got a life of where we're struggling and we're trying to push past that and break this glass ceiling or break whatever door down, or I always use Shirley Chisholm, bring my own chair, right? So now we've got all these things where we're saying, okay, in order to be excellent, I cannot no longer work inside of the system that has been structured. I've got to figure out, as you said, what my own excellence is. I still feel like, what's the step before that? Right? There's a step before that. Like,
after you ask the question?
before you ask the question, right? Because you got to first, even to ask the question, you kind of got to see a little excellence in yourself, right? And I just think about when we look across at young people now, there are so many young people that don't love themselves.
Yeah.
So then they can't see the excellence to even be reflective to get to excellence.
And even the messaging that we give, right? So I think about, and Kim, you're a firstborn. I'm a firstborn.
Me too.
Right? So the
We talked about that
messages
too.
for firstborn Black girls is very, it's very different. You are the help. You don't have not help in a bad way, but if you have younger siblings, your job is little mama. Even if you know what I mean, and if you're looking at your mother and all the things that she's doing as the little mama, you gotta bring it like your mac and cheese gotta be good too. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't come in here with no peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Sorry, Brandon, because he had a lot of PB and J's. But you know when you're looking at that, it's like, oh, the level of work that my mother is doing, I have to emulate that because I am the next in charge.
So I'm going to go back to what Kim was pulling out earlier around childhood trauma. So because I grew up in a domestic violent household, I did not want to be like my mother, even as the eldest. What I did want to do, which I felt like my mother did not do, was protect my brother and sister. And so that looked more like a caretaker in the same way earlier than I should have had to be doing any of that at 11, 12 years old. I say boarding school was my safe haven because I was allowed to be a child.
Yeah.
Even at this academically enriching, high energy, I'm going to say that, high expectations school, I was still allowed to just be a child. But it still was this, I loved the double consciousness. I lived on that in high school because I felt like that's how I was living. One foot in New England all-girls prep school, other foot in Newark, New Jersey, right? Sheltered very much, and then this other situation going on at home. What I will say was probably the defining factor for me, because a lot of people don't know I only graduated from college. Sorry, let me take the only out, right? Because that's how we...
Yeah. It ain't no little feat.
That's right.
I proudly graduated from Rutgers University in 2013. 9 years after I graduated. Oh, I'm telling you all my business. 9 years after I graduated high school. And back then, it was embarrassing to say that I left Trinity College in Connecticut with a 1.8 GPA, right? Nobody would know any of these things unless I said them.
Yeah.
And for a very long time, I did not say that because people would decide that my 1.8 GPA from Trinity College was going to be the trajectory of my life and never see who I would be
Your
today.
excellence.
Yeah.
And my excellence. However, what most young people should have and need to have are people around them to remind them that they are excellent, that they do deserve to be in spaces, in rooms, despite their failures. And because of their failures, right? Because you did this, maybe you didn't do this this way. And how do we help you get to where you still need to be? That's what excellence can look like as well.
Yeah.
That's making me think about, now you're moving us into, like, how do we make the space for people to be whole and worthy without having to perform, right? So what's the celebration? Like, we're celebrating Black excellence. What do we have to do? What's the space that needs to be created? What do we have? Who needs to be in the space? Or what kinds of characteristics does that space need to have in order for people to come in there and feel like they're whole and they're worthy to be there?
when you were saying that. I was like, we should be celebrating everything.
Yeah, yeah.
The failures and the highs, right? We like when my friends tell me like, you know, they got, or I meet people and they're like, I got a divorce, or, you know, I just broke up with some, I'm like, congratulations. Right? Like, you don't know, like so many people rush to, oh, I'm so sorry, right? You don't know what they're walking away from or getting out of, right? I'm going to lean on, this is a celebratory moment because this moment is going to do what for you? Like, I just feel like we need to make space for the breadth of life's experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And be okay with that and show that outwardly, right? Maybe you don't want to put it on a Facebook post, but you should be talking to your nieces and your nephews about this. You should be talking to your girlfriends about this, right? We put on airs with each other sometimes that don't even give space to be like, I failed at this.
Well, I
Kim.
mean, think about social media, right? That's one of the things that came up on one of the earlier podcasts is social media gives us the opportunity to just put up the best.
Right.
What looks nice. You know, I'm sitting on the jet runway right now and I got my red bottoms on or I got this, right? It's all this external stuff, right? That is and that we're putting out there to show that we've made it, we've arrived, that we're excellent, that we're proud of ourselves. But what we don't understand is all the things that it took to get somebody to that point, right? So, you know, you're talking about, hey, I was in college and had a 1 point, blah, blah, blah. But look at where I'm at today. That is a story that young people need to hear because I think there are so many young people that are disinterested in education that because the system ain't set up for them. So then you got them looking for how are they going to live? How are they going to be able to compete? This is how we have to share the whole person, the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, the ugly, so that people can understand what's the path.
Right.
And your path may not be the same as my path, but if at least I know you fell down and got up.
But I didn't do it by myself. And that's the other piece of the path, right? Black excellence also makes it feel like this is a solo show.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah.
I just did a TEDx talk and it was titled We Are the Wells, How Connection Truly Sustains Us. Because none of anything in those lowest moments of my life could have become something different if it weren't for other people. If it wasn't from people connecting with me, me reaching out to somebody or somebody being like, I see you over there. Come along. Let me help you figure out what it is that you need to figure out. And so I think we also need to understand that piece when we're talking about the excellent things that we do as Black people.
It's not by ourselves.
Right? It doesn't, like, no hashtag Black excellence. What are the excellent things that we are doing? We came together to have this conversation.
Excellence.
Excellent. You all came together to create this podcast.
Excellent.
Excellent. Even if this stayed at y'all kitchen tables, excellent.
That's right.
Right? The barometer, we get to decide. And it doesn't have to be in proximity to the whiteness and what's going on over there. It can really just be about what's happening within each other, within our own circles, and within ourselves.
And not divisive or
Exactly.
separatist.
Oh, wow. That's really good. All right. Closing thoughts. Too often Black women lead from the margins, architecting change, holding communities and moving systems forward while being overlooked. But we are not here to simply fill in the gaps. We are here to lead, to imagine, and to take up space unapologetically. This episode reminds us that our labor is not invisible, our brilliance is not accidental, and our voices are not optional.
Reclaiming sisterhood is a space for truth-telling, reimagining, and release. These are conversations that don't make it into the boardroom, into the newspaper headline, or into the strategy deck, but shape our futures anyways. It's where Black women name what's real, share what's sacred, and build on what's next. If this episode spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself.
Nope.
Share with a sister that might be in the shadows. Use it as a conversation starter with your team, your circle, or your community. Leave a review, follow us, amplify our work. And above all, reclaim your voice, reclaim your worth, reclaim your sisterhood. Welcome home.